The biblical justification for slavery. I wonder what we're going to be talking about on this episode of the Parker J. Cole Show. And welcome to this edition of the Parker J. Cole Show. I am so happy you are here with me as we talk about a rather provocative topic that I'm not quite sure what we're going to be saying today on this show. I'm really excited and looking forward to it. With me returning is my wonderful guest co-host and contributor today, Lisa Guinther. She is an all-around person that you cannot box. You cannot box who Lisa is, and that's probably the best part about her. She's an artist, an illustrator, sometimes poet, photographer. She's a preacher, feminist, Bible teacher, and philosopher. And so there's a lot of things we're going to be talking about today within the time frame that we have. So if you have questions and comments, feel free to call in 646-668-8485, then press 1 to be live on air, or you can hit me on Twitter at ParkerJCole, #PJC Show with your questions. Go ahead, take a quick short break. When we come back, we'll be talking about the biblical justification for slavery.
Are you a reader looking for more compelling Christian fiction? Maybe something a little more edgy or a bit more real? Are you tired of most Christian fiction shying away from the truth and settling for a rose-tinted view of the world and its issues? Or are you an author who has a compelling story to tell, but you're afraid it doesn't jive with today's brand of Christian or secular fiction? Are you tired of Christian publishers telling you that your content is too edgy? Or maybe you've tried submitting your content under the radar to secular publishers only to be told your themes are a bit too religious. We invite you to take a look at the Crossover Alliance. We are an online publishing company that specializes in edgy Christian speculative fiction with Christian themes and real-world content. Our company is formed from authors and readers just like you who are breaking into the mainstream and Christian markets with this compelling genre. Head over to the www.thecrossoveralliance.com for all the details on who we are, what we do, and what we accept. Right now, if you sign up for our email newsletter, you'll receive a free digital copy of our first short story anthology. Check us out today and help us spread the word about the Crossover Alliance, where light shines brighter in the darkness.
My name is Sheila White. I am the president and co-founder of Her Cries Are Heard, an organization that focuses on preventing violence against females. 1 in 3 women have been victims of physical abuse or violence by an intimate partner or non-partner within their lifetime. 94% of women killed by men were murdered by someone they knew. Violence can affect a woman's physical and mental health and also negatively affect her children. In 1991, my sister was murdered by her husband, and in 2013, my niece was murdered by a man who followed her home from a party. Being a victim of violence is devastating to the victim and the victim's family. Help us to help you. Help us to prevent this from happening to you or someone you love. Please look at our website, www.hercriesareheard.org, for the prevention tools and referrals to help save lives.
Hi, and welcome back to the show. You're listening to the Parker J. Cole Show right here on WPJC 104.5. We are going to have a very provocative topic today, talking about the biblical justification for slavery. And so many of you contacted me when you heard about this show because you're like, what in the world are you talking about? Parker, what are you doing? Don't you know your ancestors were slaves? How can you dare say that the Bible justifies slavery? Well, here's the thing. I don't know what our guest is going to say today, but she's going to help us understand exactly what we mean by the biblical justification for slavery. So without further ado, I want to introduce my guest co-host and contributor today, Lisa Guinther. Lisa, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Parker. It is so nice to be back on your show again.
It's always good to have you. You know, since our days in, I think CAA, we were in Christian Apologetics Alliance. Those days, things have changed. You've got your everything's changed for you. Your career path is moving on up, and everything else. I'm so happy to be with you. To first of all, congratulate you for your career path changes and things happening for you. And then I'm here because I'm just as intrigued by this topic as anyone else listening to the show, because like I told, no idea what she's going to say, and she told me to trust her, and I do trust her. So let's go ahead and be trustworthy. So go ahead, tell us a little bit about what we are talking about.
Okay, so what I wanted to bring forward today is to take a close look in the time allowed of the pro-biblical, in quotes, argument for slavery, and then let's look at the anti-slavery, the abolitionist position, and then let's see how they both use Scripture to promote their positions, and then see if we can see if there was a clear winner.
Okay, so for those of you listening in, we're gonna actually see a common thread here is the Bible. The Bible being used for slavery and the Bible being used for abolitionists. So let's see what's going on, because I think Lisa's going to tell us something that's going to blow our minds here. So go ahead, Lisa. Start with the first part of your talk here.
Okay, so let's listen to the thesis, the argument from the pro-biblical slavery, the support using the Bible in support of slavery. Their thesis is run like this. Number one, slavery was divinely sanctioned among the patriarchs. The examples they use of the curse of Ham done by Noah, and that the fact that Abraham owned slaves. Number two, that slavery was incorporated into Israel's national constitution, that Torah laws on the regulation of slavery were therefore sanctioned by God. Number three, that slavery was recognized and approved by Jesus Christ and the apostles. And that argument comes from a Professor Drew from the state of Virginia. Now, mind you, I want to date these for you. These all are around 1850s, 1860s in the United States. Mm-hmm. That a quote from him was, when we turn to the New Testament, we do find not one single passage at all calculated to disturb the conscience of an honest slaveholder. No one can read it without seeing and admiring that the meek and humble Savior of the world in no instance meddled with the established institutions of mankind. He came to save the fallen world and not to excite the black passions of men. Number four, that slavery is a merciful institution. And in a longer quote, the Reverend J.C. Postel, in a speech he made in 1836, said that slavery, is not a moral evil. The fact that slavery is of divine appointment would be proof enough with the Christians that it could not be a moral evil. But when we view the hordes of savage marauders and human cannibals enslaved to lust and passion and abandoned to idolatry and ignorance, to revolutionize them from such a state and enslave them where they may have the gospel and the privileges of Christians, so far from being a moral evil, it is a merciful visitation. I'm going to skip a little bit to the end of this quote, which says, and why did God not end this? It is the Lord's doing and marvelous in our eyes. And had it not been done for the best, God alone, who is able, long since would have overruled it. Now, can you see the continuing thread here of taking Bible verses to support their positions? Do we have time to go into the anti-slavery thesis?
Let me interrupt you with a question here, because I find it extremely fascinating, especially when we know that Christianity is true. We know that Jesus Christ is real. We understand our faith, and not the secondary issues that people get all worked up over, but I'm talking about the core issues of Christianity. We know it's all true. And so my question would be, and you can interpret this for me as the philosopher here, if we did not have these people who agreed that slavery is divinely appointed, that God instituted slavery, that Jesus never did anything about that, would we have had the impact on America if we did not have these kind of thoughts? And what I mean by America, this culture, like it's culture, which is we say we're a religious culture, and for Christians right now, and that's a whole nother topic, but for Christians right now, being a Christian for some people is what gets them elected, what gets them voted in, and stuff like that. So what are your thoughts, Lisa?
So I want to start out with saying you understand that the people who wrote these positions were coming from a standpoint of the Christian basis for our government system, for the founding of the United States, etc. So they're coming from a particular theological position that says America is a biblical nation. Therefore, we need to run it with biblical principles. Okay, so this is where they come from, standing on the idea for justifying their position. By using Scripture to shore up their standing.
I like how you're bringing this all together. I kind of see where you're going with this now. So what I want to hear now, we have the Bible, these people who are justifying slavery. I want to hear how the abolitionists or the anti-slavery people use the Bible to justify their position. So go ahead and share that with us.
All right. So the anti-slavery thesis is in direct result of the pro-slavery thesis. They're answering the first set of claims. So number one, the anti-slavery thesis is this. The so-called slavery of the patriarchs in no way justifies the system of slavery in the USA. Under that, Barnes wrote that Abraham was not actually a slaveholder or owner, and that the word that was translated as slave in the Hebrew was used to also describe laude as a servant. Therefore, his conclusion was that Abraham's slaves were merely his paid servants. Number two, God's deliverance of Israel from slavery in Egypt shows once and for all that God hates and condemns slavery. And then number three, Hebrew servitude in the time of Moses was voluntary, merciful, and of the benefit to the servant. It was not slavery, and he shows that by highlighting the Jubilee year in which all people who have enslaved themselves to make a living have to be released to go back to their families. Number four, that Israel's history and the prophetic oracles confirmed that oppressive slavery did not exist in Israel. God would have roundly condemned it had it existed. So he totally denies the existence of any slavery in Israel. And then number five, neither Jesus nor the apostles approved of or condoned slavery. And that all of these anti-slavery theses that I presented to you just now are all from Albert Barnes, An Inquiry into the Scriptural View of Slavery, written in 1857.
What I like about this is that you have the people who are against slavery using the same book, and I'm using this term loosely, I don't want to be disrespectful, but using the same book to justify their positions. And so before we go to break, I want to ask you this question. What is the danger with using the Bible to prop your position? And let me know if I'm saying that correctly.
That's
so go
exactly
ahead and,
right.
Okay, so go ahead and tell us, what is the danger of using the Bible to prop your position?
Okay, so there's one concept we need to wrap our heads around. A thorough reading of the Bible and scriptural text incorporated in these arguments will not prove your case, because the Bible is not clear on whether God is for or against slavery, because you can make the case in both ways.
So what we're going to do is take a quick short break. When we're coming back, we're going to have more discussion with Lisa as she continues to use this topic of biblical justification for slavery and whether or not the abolitionist view or the pro-slavery are correct. If you want to join in the conversation, feel free to do so by calling in at 646-668-8485 and then press 1 to be live on air. Or you can hit me on Twitter at Parker J. Cole, hashtag PJC Show with your questions and comments. We're going to take a break.
Let's get cooking. Yadi Cooks is a place where you will find recipe ideas, tutorials and tips, clean eating, classic favorites, meal plans, nutrition information, and a lot more. You can find instructional videos or download recipes found on YadiCooks.com. Follow my cooking chronicles on Instagram and Twitter. Get quarterly newsletters, latest updates on trending food culture at YadiCooks.com. Let's get cooking.
Has God called you to be a pastor or leader, but the men and women in your church won't let you speak because you're a female? Is the call to minister strong on your life, but you hesitate because you think the Bible tells women to be silent in the church? I'm Jory Micah, and I am here to tell you, sister, that together we can break the glass steeple. I fight and advocate for gender equality in the church, and there are others with me who are holding up the banner. Subscribe to my blog at JoryMicah.com for interviews, commentary, and uplifting words to give you the motivation to answer the call to ministry. Together, we can break the glass steeple and inspire all of God's children, men and women alike, to answer the call to ministry.
Hi, and welcome back to the show. You're listening to Parker J. Cole Show on WPJC 104.5. We are talking with Lisa Guinther. She is an all-around, well-suited, well-educated woman I've come to appreciate and know. Artist, published illustrator. She's a sometimes poet, photographer, preacher, feminist, Bible teacher, and a philosopher. And what she's doing here is helping us to understand what we mean by the biblical justification for slavery. And what Lisa break, she allowed us to see how the pro-slavery people used the Bible to justify their position. And then she also showed how the abolitionists and anti-slavery people used the Bible to justify their position. And she told us on the other side of the break, she said that there's a danger to using the Bible to justify your position. And the reason why, she says, is that the Bible is not clear about slavery, which actually is quite very interesting to continue to talk about. And so, Lisa, to kind of segue our conversation, I'm going to take a really quick rabbit trail. Earlier in our show, I played a clip of an organization called Her Cries Are Heard, and it's an organization to prevent women from domestic violence. And I actually heard the interview with the young lady there. And I got to thinking, you know, it is quite dangerous to always say the Bible has a very clear thought about certain things, because someone can take scriptures and twist them and say it's okay to beat your wife. It's okay to beat your wife, beat your daughter, beat your sister, beat whatever, and she has to submit to you, right? You're the head of the household, right? You're the, you know, all these things, those big, huge verses that cause so much controversy in the church. And someone can take that and use the Bible to justify that. And so we're using slavery today, but we want to take Lisa's thoughts here and her process here and make sure that we are not putting words in God's mouth. I think that's where we're going here, but let's be sure. And so let's continue to talk about our topic, Lisa. So I want to go into some more of the research that you did when preparing for the show and preparing your own thoughts about it. And so I want to talk about the book Cotton is King, which is pro-slavery arguments. Give us a little bit about that.
Okay, so what you have in the book Cotton is King is you have a series of essays done by, I believe every single man that wrote an essay were all slaveholders. So they had a vested financial interest in maintaining their position. So there is an essay in there on the biblical argument for slavery, and that's where these pro-slavery theses basically come from. It was really important to them, of course, because they would lose a lot of money. If you think about the fact that when I was trying before I came on the show to find the numbers from when slavery was overturned in Great Britain, how much money that was lost to the economy of Great Britain when slavery was ended, and it was phenomenal. And I think it's somewhere in today's monies, we're probably talking billions of dollars. Okay, so there really was, I mean, you got to be real with the fact that there's a vested financial goal here. So when the pro-slavery movement came back to argue against the anti-slavery position, the first thing they did was undercut their exegesis, their interpretation of the biblical scriptures. And they showed that. And we know from historical, archaeological research and records that we have, yes, there was certainly slavery. There was slavery in Israel. There was slavery in the surrounding kingdom. So you can't use the argument, though, God would have just gotten rid of it. Because we're not puppets. That's another theological debate. We're not going to get into the free will argument here. Okay. But there are certain things that are our responsibilities. And where the abolitionist position had to go to is the higher calling. We have been made free in Christ Jesus. And what does that mean for our walk today? You know, what did it mean in their day in the late 1900s? So what became the stronger argument was that Jesus came to set people free, and the importance of loving one's neighbor, and are the enslaved blacks in America our neighbor? And clearly the Gospels would say yes.
What I think is interesting, too, and I'm going to go back to a memory I had. I was reading a book many years ago. It was a Civil War book. You know, I think it was a romance/women's fiction. And it was the one girl, she looked white, but she was black. She had she was mixed, but she looked white. Like, you could not tell that she was not black. She looked white. And so in the book, the slave owner's guy, she was in love with him, but he always knew that she was black. You know, even though she looked white, she always knew she was black, whatever. And so then she fell in love with this black guy who was free. And one thing he said, he's like, you know what? When you talk about the North and the South, he said it's like you have two different positions. You have the South says, God bless you, be a slave. And then he said the North says, God damn you, be free, you know. And so you have this ideologies going back and forth. But I want to kind of get into the people groups that are involved with this discussion of the biblical justification for slavery. We have the pro-slavery people. We have the anti-slavery people, and then we have the slaves themselves. How are the slaves themselves during this time? What are they thinking? What are some of their thoughts going through their head?
Well, the slaves themselves, once they got their hands on copies of the Bible, those that were taught to read, because you understand that it actually was a crime to teach your slaves to read.
Yeah.
Okay. So they studied the Bible with a look to seeing how God came to free people. The literal freedom of the Israelites in Egypt, and the spiritual freedom of Jesus saying, you know, if the Son sets you free, you're free indeed. Now, how does that walk out if you're a slave? So it started, you know, the movements of the songs, the spirituals, and I mean what was picked up in the anti-slavery movement in Great Britain was, hold on, I'm trying to find that. There it is.
Take your time.
Okay. So we're talking about an ex-slave named William Wells Brown wrote a poem that's very well known, and it's been used in a very famous anti-slavery pin, button, in plates, etc. Ain't I not a man and brother? Am I not a man and brother? Ought I not then to be free? Sell me not to one another. Take not thus my liberty. Christ our Savior died for me as well as thee. So you see, you see the interpretation of where they're going with that is the kingdom of God on earth as it is in heaven. and that enslaving one another is against God's will for all humanity.
It's interesting here because I have always considered that the slavery in the Bible was not the slavery that was practiced in the U.S. and in other parts of the world. We're talking not just slavery of human beings, but like sex slavery, child labor laws that essentially make children slaves, all this kind of stuff. I don't believe that was practiced in the Bible. I could be wrong, and that's why you're here to help correct me.
So, now here I'm going to correct you.
Go ahead.
Okay, but what you see in the Bible is not any one single kind of slavery.
Okay.
You have a mix of types of slavery, and that's where context comes in. Mm-hmm. Within the nation of Israel, there was a move in in the Levitical laws towards mercy towards the slaves, and not to enslave your brothers and sisters who were fellow Israelites, to let them go if they asked to be taken care of in the way that slavery would do. But it also disallowed the return of slaves from other countries surrounding Israel. If they had run away from a cruel master, it forbade you to return those slaves. Mm-hmm. Also, you had all around Israel, and a part of what is so vital to understand in the rants against especially homosexuality, what you were talking about is sex slavery in temples, in the worship of other gods. Mm-hmm. So those people that were held in these other temples, in the Canaanite religions, in Babylonia, etc., and in Egypt as well, were actually slaves. They weren't permitted to leave those temples. And so you had temple-sanctioned prostitution. And when there was an import of these foreign religions into the nation of Israel, later on the career in their history, a lot of the rants of the prophets were against this sort of worship of other gods. It was not just, I love to say it this way, it was not just burning a little incense and bowing before an idol. It was generally orgies in the temple to do, it's called sympathetic magic. If we do it here on earth, then the gods are going to give us good things. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, which was directly against what the rules, what Yahweh was asking for his people. Follow me, I'll take care of you if you just get rid of these foreign gods. So what you have overall in Israel is, though, they definitely went the way of idol worship, away from God, but you have a move in those laws towards a progressively more merciful and just treatment of human beings, which we don't see culminating until we get to Jesus. So what we see is an evolution, if you will, of how human beings should treat one another.
Okay, so what I'm getting from the conversation, and of course make sure you tweak my understanding, is that it wasn't clear-cut whether or not slavery was good or bad. It was how do you treat people. If a person is in submission to you, like a servant, I use a servant because I like that term better, but like a servant who said, hey, I'll take care of you, you take care of me, something like that, as opposed to being treated like trash. You're my servant, you're going to do what I say, you're going to like it, kind of that thing. Right. So it went from whether go ahead.
No, I was going to say the whole institution of slavery is horrible to human beings. Okay, let's make that one bottom line. No matter, being a nice slaveholder is still being a slaveholder. The human being is still not free. But there are historical examples of better or worse treatment. Hence, laws in Israel about not returning escaped slaves, because they want a better life. Now, when we move up the ladder to Roman slavery, remember in the enslavement of people under Rome was what happened when you were conquered. You were enslaved.
Yeah.
And one of the ironies of the Pharisees and Sadducees' behavior in Jesus' day is in the Gospel of John, they talk about when they're arguing with Jesus, when Jesus says, well, when the Son makes you free, you're free indeed, and they say, well, we're not slaves to anyone. We have Abraham as our father, which is ironic. They were all enslaved to the Roman Empire. They were not free. They were not full citizens of Rome. They were allowed to carry out their religion as it was considered illicit, a legal religion within Rome, but they weren't free.
No. Else why we have the zealots, else why we have the zealots who are going against the Romans. So what I want to do is that, go ahead, Lisa, then I want to go into another break.
I was going to say that what we see in the history of Christianity is a move throughout history towards more and more human rights and more behavior that is treating our brothers and sisters justly. And a lot of laws were put in place because of the influence of loving your neighbor as yourself.
We are just having a great conversation with Lisa Guinther. She is a preacher, feminist, Bible teacher, philosopher, published illustrator, artist, and she is helping us understand what we mean by the biblical justification for slavery. If you want to weigh in, you certainly can by calling in at 646-668-8485 and then press 1 to be live on air, or you can hit me on Twitter at Parker J. Cole, #PJC Show, with your questions and comments. We're going to go ahead and take a quick short break. We'll be right back after these messages.
Authors, are you looking for a new way to get your book in the hands of new audience of targeted buyers? Then a virtual book tour is for you. Right now, virtual book tours is an excellent opportunity for you to introduce your book and who you are as an author. Launching your book is very important. A virtual book tour will connect you with readers. We at WNL, we specialize in book tours, book blasts, radio tours, cover reveals, and Facebook chat. Promoting and marketing your book is what we do. Online publicity, the exposure and the publicity is what you need. Let us help you reach new readers and a new audience. We take care of everything so you don't have to. We set up the tour for you. We connect you with bloggers to advertise your book by way of interviews, guest posts, and reviews. If you are an author of a newly published book, have an upcoming release, or just want to give a previously book new life, a virtual book tour is your answer. Check our tours out at www.wnlbooktours.com. Visit me on Facebook. I am the owner, Paulette Harper.
Have you read the latest issue of SORMAG Digital, the award-winning literary magazine for multicultural readers and writers? SORMAG Digital is available quarterly and showcases interviews with the best authors in multicultural literature. SORMAG Digital features craft and business articles for those interested in writing. If you're looking for a good book, check out our book reviews on what's hot in multicultural literature. For writers looking for new readers to get in front of, SORMAG Digital is the perfect place to introduce your book. We offer advertising spaces that fit your promotional budget. Get your free subscription on SORMAG.com or order a print issue on magcloud.com. If you would like more information about SORMAG Digital, check us out on SORMAG.com or contact us at SORMAG@yahoo.com. SORMAG Digital is the magazine for multicultural readers and writers.
Hi, and welcome back. We are talking about the biblical justification for slavery. And what's been very interesting about this topic was that I had no idea what we were going to be talking about. But the more Lisa uses her education and her history, and the more she begins to explain it, she's telling us that it's a dangerous place to be when you use the Bible to justify your position. Now, we should probably clarify, we're not saying that the Bible is always hazy or murky or anything like that. We're not saying that, but for some issues we do have to be careful, and these are things I had never considered before. So Lisa, once again, thank you for being with us on the show and helping us to make sure that we are read up and studied up and educated up on what we say the Bible says. We need to be really conscientious of that. And so what I wanted to do, Lisa, is that we did receive some comments from our listeners and supporters of the show, and I wanted you to have a chance to respond to them. So some of the comments are kind of long, so I'm just going to read them, and then for each one I'll have you respond to. So we did get a comment. The first comment we got was from Jeremy in Dothan, Alabama. Jeremy, thank you for your comment. Jeremy says this: the Bible talks way too much about freedom from bondage to legitimately advocate a way of life where bondage is acceptable. We're called to be instant, in season, and out. For example, ready to go to work for God on a second's notice. And that's a reality that is simply impossible if someone is trying to serve two masters, his God and his owner. But man loves a loophole. And if God, quote unquote, permits slavery through the law, man will exploit it to the best of his ability. So it's fair to note here that when Scripture defines and hems in slavery, it doesn't legitimize slavery any more than God hemming in divorce legitimizes divorce. God still hates the abandonment of the marital covenant every bit as much as he did before he detailed the rules regarding divorce. In fact, it could be argued that he discourages divorce by rendering such rules, nullifying everything, quote unquote, attractive about divorce while still allowing for the brokenness of man. So it is with slavery. Whether God renders the rule or not, man will still seek to own his neighbor or sell himself into slavery to his neighbor, a reality that continues even today, whether you're talking about chattel slavery or debt or political mandates or what have you. So God approaches slavery the same way he does divorce, by stripping the reality of slavery of everything that might make it attractive. Jeremy, thank you so much for that comment. Lisa, I know that was kind of long, so let me know if you need me to repeat anything.
No, it was fantastic. That's that's a part of how the abolitionists overturned chattel slavery in the United States. I absolutely agree with him, and we do tend to, and yes, human beings, this is one of the reasons why we don't have a set of laws like that we have to follow as in Levitical laws. What the Pharisees made famous was law keeping, and you're spending all of your time law keeping and you miss the love of God. One thing that I would like to push back a little bit on is divorce laws. If we have to this is where it's important to really, really, truly understand what's going on in Jesus' day. The divorce laws were meant the overturning. Okay, let me start over again. So when Jesus forbade divorce, what he was forbidding is older men tired of their wives. They want to chuck that woman and get a new younger wife to take her place in general, okay, not necessarily in specific cases. Okay, so women were as much chattel slaves in their day as they were in the late 1900s in America. So when we have to look into the reason why, and it was still to make light, and I agree with Jeremy here on making light of the marital covenant. But let's move that into the 21st century. So why do people want to make light of the marital covenant? Is it the same reason? In the case of an abusive relationship, yeah, you're still in the same reasons. If you're talking about making light of the marital covenant because you're going through a hard patch and you just don't like each other, well then we need to hold on to Jesus' original intent. So all I added, I think, to that was an additional clarification. But I agree with him.
Well, he makes a good point, and I will not. And when it comes to especially women who are in abusive relationships with men who are beating them, I do not encourage that you stay with someone who does that. I do not encourage that. Is there redemption? Yes. I totally believe that the Lord can redeem anybody, if they have a repentant heart. I totally believe that. But I don't think you should die.
But the key to what you said, you said was the repentant heart.
Yes, the repentant heart, It has to be a repentant heart because, and we can go on and on. That was a little bit of rabbit trail going on here. So let me go back. Let me come back here. So I want to read a comment. And this one is from Sheila in Detroit, if I can get to it. Sheila in Detroit. Sheila says, when we speak of slavery, it has negative effects. Throughout the Bible, slavery is mentioned and practiced. In the Old Testament, Exodus, it talks about how the master is supposed to treat the slave. Then in Exodus 20:17, which are called the commandments, states that a person should not covet thy neighbor's house or anything of the neighbor. Although this deals with the desire to have what the neighbor has, one could use this as a tool of slavery. Slavery, as we know it today and throughout history, was brutal, murderous, and inhumane. Joseph in the Bible was sold into slavery by his own brothers. His fate looked doomed, but in the end, he was the number 2 man under Pharaoh. He was able to save his family, but then they became slaves under a new ruler, later to be freed from their master. Esther, who became a queen, who later saved her people. Did God permit the institution of slavery? Yes. Did God protect the slaves? Yes. Was freedom granted? Yes. And then she says, this is an extremely difficult subject to even talk about. Sheila, thank you so much for your comment. Lisa?
Sheila, first off, I understand. Maybe I should have made that clear at the beginning of this, that this is an extremely difficult conversation for some people to hear at all. So, and she is right on when she said, you know, it was the intent of Joseph's brothers. The intent was for him to die. I mean, they just weren't going to do it with their directly. They were going to do it indirectly. Their intent was for Joseph to die. Most slaves died. They were worked to death by their masters. You know, so she's right on. Later on, we have the story of Esther, who is, and you know, when you really understand the plight, especially of women in the ancient world, you understand how tough a situation Esther was in, and she walked through it with advice of her uncle, and came through, ended up being instrumental in saving her people. So yeah, this is a part of the discipline of reading our Bibles and really studying it and not shying away from the tough stories. So what can we take from these stories? Is that well, in Joseph's case, he was faithful to God in a really terrible situation, and God brought him through. Look at Esther. Esther was faithful in a really difficult situation, and God brought her through, which is to encourage us in our walks, but we're also in our own personal walks with God. It doesn't necessarily mean we're going to live happily ever after.
Amen.
Okay.
Amen, Lisa. You can say that again.
Okay. This is about faithfulness. This isn't about happily ever after.
Amen.
That's
and I think that
hard
is
to hear.
So important.
And when you think about the history of slavery in America and slavery in the West Indies, the British slave trade, I mean, this is human beings used as machines that were used until they broke and wore out and were tossed away. And you think about the generations of human beings that died under slavery before they were liberated. And it breaks your heart. It's horrible. But we cannot forget history.
And I think that is the core of some of the things that you're saying, because if we understand the history, we can understand the future, to be honest with you, and where things are going with that. And my final comment I want to read for this segment is from Carol in New York. And Carol, thank you so much for your comment. She kind of, I don't want to say ramble, but it's a lot of thoughts here, so I'll try to be cohesive with them. First, remember to cite that most of the abolitionists were, I think she means slave owners. And then she says, secondly, it's interesting that Revelations 13:16 mentions slaves. So there is slavery nowadays that doesn't have to do with Christianity. In the Middle East, in Africa, in Cambodia, and Thailand, human trafficking and sex trafficking. There is also debt slavery and sex slavery. Also consider that in countries that have had uber Calvinism, there was a tendency to divide the world into those who are elect and those who weren't. Thus, in South Africa, U.S., and certain countries where Calvinism ruled Christianity, blacks, Native Americans, Aborigines were seen as the ones who are not elect Therefore, whites and the elect could do anything to them. And then she goes on, slavery itself still exists, so why do American blacks not fight against slavery in Sudan and in Middle Eastern countries? And why do American Muslims forget the thousands of years of slavery in Islam? Reading 1001 Nights is a hard read because of that. There is a silly Noah cursed his son stuff and the Sethite theory, but think of I can never say his name, Philemon, a very revolutionary book because it shows that Christian slaves and masters ate together. Also remember that Paul and the Christians were trying to keep alive. Paul was not going to send Tychicus on a mission, letters that the authorities might get to. It'd be foolish to write a letter against slavery when you're a small persecuted group. Don't get her thought here. It says, what if Tychicus was caught on one of those mailman duties of his? And those are her comments. Carol, again, thank you for your insight and your comments. Lisa?
Yeah, Carol, she's right on. I mean, that's exactly right. Everything down the list, and it really is interesting in hyper-Calvinism with the idea of the elect and the non-elect. I agree. It was used to oppress a lot of people. As far as Onesimus, and it's interesting that in biblical scholarship, and I took a quick peek at Craig Blomberg, who teaches New Testament and Greek at Denver Seminary. There's actually 3 theories about Onesimus. And I was really surprised about that because I always thought he was just a runaway slave. Actually, it's possible that he was actually sent to Paul on a mission and then converted to Christianity. That Philemon was actually Onesimus' brother.
Oh.
And they were fighting. And then third is that Onesimus was in a dispute, not as a slave, but just flat out in a dispute with Philemon, and went to Paul for Paul to be a mediator, which is a very common thing in the Roman Empire. So him being a runaway slave is really only one of, there are 3 other theories. So,
what I thought, go ahead.
So again, you see that little bitty book was taken by both parties in the slave debate and put to their own use. Only reading it, that's the interpretation that has come down to us today, is that Onesimus was a runaway slave. So it's interesting there that we still assume that when it could actually be the case that there's a different reason.
What I'm finding here, and I want to make some clarifications here, because I can hear someone going, well, if the Bible's unclear on this issue, now is it clear on any issue? Why can't we just do that? And I don't want that to be the case, because we're not sitting up here saying that you can't understand the Bible, you can't take it at its face value or its word. So go ahead, correct. So
let's clarify that right now. What the Bible tells us, the overarching story is that God's pursuit of fallen humanity throughout the history of Israel, and the salvation history leading up to Jesus' ministry and life on this earth to bring salvation to humanity and to bring reconciliation between human beings and God. So that, and it shows us the history of ancient Israel. It shows us the history of the early church and how this thing called the Old Testament and the New Testament came to be. And it gives us what was the Old Testament, the old will of God for mankind, and then the clarification through Jesus Christ, which is our New Testament. So it's clear. The story is clear, but you see what I'm trying to highlight is the problems that one runs into when one picks out text to support one's position, and having to go back and look at what the overarching message of the gospel is. And then one of the things, the book that I researched in called Slavery, Sabbath, War, and Women, it highlights the fact that in order to see how we should then live as Christians, we need to work that out in community. So, yeah.
I think you really hit on the nail. That's why one thing that when Lisa and I were discussing this topic, Lisa made it very clear to me. She said, we're going to treat this topic we're going to answer and we're going to tackle it. And we probably could still hit some more on it, but we got about 10 minutes left. So it's usually how it goes. But when Lisa she said, I'm going to treat this topic very gently and very carefully, because we tend to have a knee-jerk reaction to the Bible doesn't justify slavery. But I think there's an underlying thread that's going on here. And when we get back from the break, Lisa's going to tell us we're not just talking about slavery. There's something else we're talking about here. There's something else that she really wants us to understand as Christians. If we say we love the Lord, if we say we follow his edicts and his commands, if we say that he is the head of our life, that he's the center of our being, that he makes us breathe and live and everything, if we say that, then there's something underlying this whole message that we talked about today. There's something else underlying that. And Lisa's going to tell us what that is when we come back from the break. If you still want to try to get one of your questions in, you certainly can by calling in at 646-668-8485 and then press 1 to be live on air. Or you can hit me on Twitter at Parker J. Cole, hashtag PJC Show with your questions and comments. We're going to go ahead and take a quick short break. We'll be right back.
Autism affects 1 in 68 children, sweeping all racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic groups. Autism is a lifelong brain disorder that leads to untold challenges to the physical, financial, and social well-being of people with autism and their families. Resources are stretched thin. The Autism Alliance of Michigan, a collective voice for families across the entire state, uses resources to help families battle challenges right here, right now. If you or anyone you know needs help navigating the autism journey, contact the Autism Alliance of Michigan today, 877-463-AAOM, or visit them online at aaomi.org.
Engaging the culture's imagination through speculative fiction, the Untold Podcast produces audio fiction from a Christian worldview. Find us over at untoldpodcast.com, where we partner with authors to tell science fiction, fantasy, supernatural, and horror stories. Find links at untoldpodcast.com to subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, and a variety of other platforms. Each month we produce high-quality audio fiction that's free to download and free to listen. Our submissions are open, and we're always looking to add another great story to over 24 hours of narrative entertainment. Find all of our audio fiction over at www.untoldpodcast.com.
Hi, and welcome back to the show. You're listening to the Parker J. Cole Show right here on WPJC 104.5. This episode has been one of the most interesting, most probably difficult topics I've talked about on the show. And I've talked about a lot of different difficult topics on this show. Then one of the most interesting ones, and of course Lisa would bring it to me. Like I told you, you can't box Lisa up. When you get to know Lisa, you're going to know Lisa for who she is, and that's not in the box. And Lisa, thank you for being the woman that you are to go ahead and have the courage to tackle these type of topics. And I think this is one of the weaknesses of today's church as a whole, is that we don't want to talk about these difficult topics. We don't want to talk about the history. We don't want to talk about the those murky areas that we don't always have answers to. I'm a huge Norman Geisler fan, and I like his book, The Big Book of Bible Difficulties. I like his book because he kind of puts it out there. Here are some difficult things that we don't always have the answers to. There are a lot of secular issues, I mean, not secular, but secondary issues. But hey, he goes out there and talks about them in this book, and I appreciate you doing the same thing here. Before the break, I mentioned that our topic is not just about slavery, though. There's something else underlying this whole topic, and I want you to go ahead and tell our listeners what is underlying this whole topic that we discussed today.
Okay, well, one of the things that I think the point I was trying to make here is people who think they're being honorable to the Bible as a whole by saying, I take the Bible literally. Mm-hmm. So if we look at what people really meant in the past, for example, during the Reformation, when people were talking about taking the Bible literally, what they were intending is to interpret it So literal interpretations to them denoted the plain or historical meaning of the intended by the writer, in contrast to an allegorical interpretation that made it super spiritual. But I think what we mean here when we say the term literal, both during literal interpretation of the Bible, is both during the fight against slavery as today. It's a mechanical interpretation of the Bible with no consideration to what the original writer intended or what the original audience would have heard. And finally, what we need to ask ourselves is if the message itself can be brought forward in our world today. I guess the second thing that I really want people to understand is, how do we understand the gospel? You know, do we see the teachings of Jesus as our guide to understanding God? Do we see that the true challenge of the gospel is to take us to a higher standard, the kingdom of God on earth as it is in heaven, and for us to ever take Scripture as a weapon of oppression, it's always wrong. To use the Bible to further our goals is always wrong, and to use the Bible to win an argument is to do violence to the text. And then finally, we all need to be studying the Scriptures to show ourselves approved. We need to take time to read the Bible every day, and not just one or two lines, but read at least a whole chapter. That we should take some time to read up on the history of the era you are reading when you're reading the Bible. And always ask yourself these questions. Number one, why was this written? Number two, who was it written to and what would they have understood? And finally, what can we in the 21st century learn from what we're reading? What can the text teach us? And there are times, as in the case of Old Testament and New Testament slavery texts, we might have to say, no, there is nothing that we can bring into the 21st century. So for anyone interested in deeper study of Scripture, please read all the way around a subject. Don't just read one author. Look at multiple voices and always read the opposing viewpoints so that you understand the issues.
Lisa, thank you so much for being with me on the show. I want to go ahead and share your notes for those who want to do a deeper study on this. And these were the books. These books are, I believe you said they're currently available for free.
Yeah,
you
these
get
are
the
all
digital books. Yeah.
Right. All of the digital books are available in the public domain, so they're free online. And then the book that I use as my key text here is William Swartley's Slavery, Sabbath, War, and Women, case issues in biblical interpretation.
And so I'm just going to name off a few of her references. And the first reference we have is Cotton is King, Pro-Slavery Arguments, written back in 1860 by E.N. Eliot. You can get that book on the public domain. Like she said, it's for free. The next pro-slavery book is An Inquiry into the Scriptural Views of Slavery by Albert Barnes, and that was in 1860.
Okay, that's actually the abolitionist view.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. That's the abolitionist view. Oh, it says Negro Universities Press, so that should have probably gave me a clue. But
it's okay.
But that's the press that did Negro Universities Press back in 1857, and the title is An Inquiry into the Scriptural Views of Slavery by Albert Barnes. And then the American Churches, the Bulwark of American Slavery. It says by an American here, and so you can also get that on the public domain. And then the book that Lisa used as part of her main text for today's conversation is Slavery, Sabbath, War, and Women, Case Issues in Biblical Interpretation. That's 1983, Herald Press by Willard M. Swartley. And these are, again, all free on the public domain, so go ahead and educate yourself. Go ahead and see if what we're saying is true. I've told you so many times on this show, don't take my word for it. Do your own research. And one thing that Lisa is encouraging all of us to do is to do that. Read your Bibles. Study the Word. Get deep down into it. Eat it. As one woman told me many years ago, she said, you have to eat this Word, you know. And then go ahead and look outside and get the historical context of some of the passages that you're reading. I remember for myself, Lisa, I was in Bible class and we were doing a study on Habakkuk. And I mean, I've read Habakkuk, before, but it was like, 3 chapters. And so I was like, okay, done with that one, keep moving. And it was a 6-week course. And by the time we were finished, there was so much in there that I had not understood before. And the gentleman had used YouTube videos and extra biblical sources like the history of what's going on behind everything, and just completely enriched those 3 chapters. It enriched it, and it gave me a better understanding what's going on and what the people were thinking, what the kings were thinking. The contract. It was like almost like a mafia thing. The way he described it in a Bible class with Judah and Babylon, I think it is. I maybe have it wrong. Forgive me. But it was just enriched everything for me. So that's why the history of the Bible is so important too. So you can understand. Oh, this was happening here and here and there. And then, like Lisa said, do more than read 2 verses a day. Do your quick devotional. Go ahead and read a chapter a day, because some of us can eat up 1,000-page books in an hour. We can eat them up. Why would we not do that with the Lord's word? So let's definitely try to be better stewards of God's word and better understanding God's word too. Lisa, once again, thank you so much for being with us on the show today. Can't wait to have you back, and can't wait to talk to you real soon.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
And we just had a wonderful time with my guest co-host and contributor today, Lisa Guinther. She is just a wonderful woman of God, and she is also a preacher, Bible teacher, philosopher, and feminist. If you want to get more information about Lisa, you need to go to her website, because she has a lot of information there. You want to go to her website at insightsfromthefurnace.blogspot.com. Again, insightsfromthefurnace.blogspot.com. And so what she's going to do is just give you things about herself, about her views and everything, or you can look at her beautiful portraits and some of the things that she's done, because she's also an illustrator and an artist, and a sometimes poet too. So go ahead, visit her website, insightsfromthefurnace.blogspot.com. You won't be disappointed. Thank you so much for joining me for this edition of the Parker J. Cole Show. You have a wonderful, absolutely glorious, blessed day, and God bless.